Good afternoon, sir. My name is Milea Balvijan Numanahan from LITT1102 This video is seek to explain how Hamlet considered as a tragedy based on Aristotelian theory or vision. First, what is Aristotelian concept of a tragedy? For Aristotle, tragedy is an imitation or mimesis of an action that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude. Through pity and fear affecting the proper purgation or catharsis of these emotions. Ambiguous means may be employed. Aristotle maintains in contrast to Plato to a virtuous and purifying end. Aristotle defines tragedy according to 7 characteristics. The first one is, it is mimetic, it is serious, it tells a full story of an appropriate length, it contains rhythm and harmony. Fifth, rhythm and harmony occur in different combination in different parts of the tragedy. 6. It is performed rather than narrated, and it arouses of the feelings of pity and fear and then purges these feelings through catharsis. Also, a tragedy is composed of 6 parts which are enumerated here in descending order of importance from most vital to least important. The first one is story, character, thought, diction, music, spectacle, and conclusion. For a plot to be properly developed, it must begin with no essential consequence or any prior action. Progress to a middle follows logically from the middle and no conclude with no required consequence of any subsequent action. The storyline should be unified, which means that every part of the plot should be interconnected with the rest of the plot, leaving no loose end at the end of the story. It is because of this kind of coherence that tragedy can portray universal ideas with such force, which distinguish it from history, which can only speak about specific events. Episodic plots are awful because there is no reason for events to occur in the order that they do. The ideal form of storyline incorporates surprises, but only those surprises that in retrospect make logical sense in the context of the whole story. Surprising events such as peripeteia or the reversal of fate and anagnosis or discovery are among the most enjoyable types of surprises. In a good plot, the progression is analogous to that of a knot that is tied with increasing complexity until the moment of peripeteia, at which point the knot is gradually undone until the story achieves an entirely unknotted ending. If we want to feel sorry for and fear for the hero of a tragedy, we must see him fall from happiness to suffering as a result of his own mistake. This is called tragedy. When it is a family member that attack one another rather than opponents or stranger, we are moved to tears and grieved in the most powerful way. In the best kind of narrative, a character comes into dangerously close to accidentally killing of a family member due to an anagnosis that discloses the family connection. The hero must possess admirable characteristics that are fitting for his or her position, and he or she must be depicted accurately and consistently, because both the character of the hero and the story must be logically consistent. Aristotle concludes that the plot must be untied as necessary consequence of the plot rather than a result of stage magic, such as a deus ex machina, for example, or a machine used in some place in which an actor playing one of the gods was lowered onto the stage at the end. Aristotle begins with a discussion of mind and diction before moving on the subject of epic poetry. When compared to tragedy, which is composed of activities presented in a dramatic style, epic poetry, it is composed verse that is given in a narrative form. There are many similarities between tragedy and epic poetry the most notable, which is the coherence of storyline and the same subject matter. But because it is not performed, epic poetry has the potential to be lengthier than tragedy and to deal with more amazing action that has a much broader scope than tragedy. Tragic literature, on the other hand, can be more focused and can make use of the device of music and spectacle. Epic poetry and tragedy are both composed in different meters, and as is lyrical poetry. Once Aristotle has defended poetry against accusations that it deals with strange or impossible events, he closes by comparing tragedies with epic poems and concluding that tragedy is on the whole preferable to epic poetry, so that is the tragedy and its element according to Aristotle. So now that we know the tragedy for Aristotelian theory, we can now conclude from the play Hamlet and know why it is considered as tragedy based on Aristotelian theory. And we will start for I will share you the summarize of the play that I've read for you to be able understand more what I'm saying. In continuation of our discussion, in Hamlet's character that ultimately leads to his death is his inability to act. Throughout the play, this flaw in Hamlet's character is highlighted and discussed. A scene from the play's open with the ghost of old Hamlet revealing the truth about his death to Hamlet's son and telling him that it is his responsibility to exact revenge. Hast me to know that I may sweep to my retribution with winds as sweep, Hamlet says in his initial answer, which suggests that he intends to strike quickly. You can see on C line 29 to 31. As a result of Hamlet's failure to act on his father's extortion, by the end of that exact scene, he is reluctant to kill King Claudius as he exclaimed, "This time is out of joint, or coarse grudge that I was ever born to set it straight." The play progresses and Hamlet has not completed his homicidal mission as of this point. When Hamlet comes to Act 2 or Scene 2, he determines that before he can revenge his father's death, he must first determine whether or not the ghost was telling the truth. However, this merely serves to provide Hamlet with the yet another reason to put off killing Claudius until after the play. Inside the play, Moosetrap has been performed on the stage. Not surprisingly, Hamlet's incapacity to act persists even after he has gained conclusive evidence that Claudius is guilty and he is left with just the option of contemplating the deed. Further evidence of Hamlet's tragic flaw can be found in Act 3 or Scene 3. During the performance, Hamlet keeps a close eye on Claudius to see how he will respond. Claudius is agitated by the play and he storms out in the middle of the performance. He decided to expel Hamlet almost immediately. Hamlet is summoned by his distraught mother, Gertrude, and while on his way, there he comes across Claudius, who is kneeling and making an unsuccessful attempt to pray. Hamlet argues that killing the king now would only send his soul to paradise rather than damnation, and that this is the best course of action. After much deliberation, Hamlet decides to spare his life for now. Polonius takes refuge in Gertrude's room to keep her safe from her unpredictable son's antics. When Hamlet arrives at his mother's house to reprimand her, he notices Polonius approaching from behind, a kind of tapestry. He stabs Polonius in the chest with the tapestry, killing him in the process. It's the spirit of Hamlet's father who reappears, warning his son not to postpone vengeance lest he upset his mother. On Act 4, Hamlet is dispatched to England, ostensibly as an envoy, while King Fortinbras of Norway crosses the Danish border with an army to conquer Poland. Hamlet discovers that Claudius has devised a plan to assassinate him once he reaches his destination during his travel. As a result, he travels alone to Denmark, sending his companions Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to their deaths in his place. Ophelia, who Hamlet rejected, is now lonesome due to her father's death. She becomes insane and ends up drowning. At the last part of the scene, on his way back to Denmark, encounters Horatio in a graveyard along the gravedigger, where the two discuss the chance of living and dying. Ophelia's funeral procession arrives at the same cemetery as Ophelia's. What a stroke of luck. During a meeting with Ophelia's brothers, late Laertes, at the court, Hamlet confronts him about his father's absence from the court. The duel between Hamlet and Laertes is set to take place. Claudio and Laertes plot to assassinate Hamlet throughout the match. According to their plan, they want Hamlet to die either with a poisoned sword or with poisoned wine. Gertrude drinks from the poisoned cup and dies due to her unintentional consumption of the poison. After that, the poisoned sword injures both Laertes and Hamlet, and Laertes dies due to his injuries. Claudius is killed by Hamlet, who is in the throes of death. The play ends with Hamlet's death, leaving only his body Horatio to explain the truth to the newly crowned king. 14 brass upon his return from the Polish battle. So that is the summary that I understand on this play. We can consider it tragedy based on Aristotelian theory because, as I've said on the beginning of this video, and based on the flow of the story, we can apply the definition of tragedy on Hamlet because it is a revenge tragedy composed in the tradition of the Roman Senecan tragedy, a revenge tragedy. Because like what I've said before, it is about revenge of a son for his father's death. It is all about revenge and killing. It is a tragedy of moral sensibility and self-reflection combined. The protagonist is overlaid through thoughtful and sensitive, making him unsuited to seeking revenge by physical force. He must correct the mistake of the past, but he is perplexed by the duality of guilt and justice. So this play proves to us that a mistake cannot be right of doing another mistake. Also, as outlined by Aristotle's rules of tragedy, the weakness in Hamlet's character is an inability to act, and procrastination is the blow that ultimately leads to his death. So, I hope na may naintindihan po kayo sa aking video, and yun lamang po ang aking ma-share, and ito na po yung katapusan ng aking video.